So now that we saw how to install Veeam Backup and Replication in previous lesson, in today's lesson I'm going to talk about how we can connect your Veeam Backup server to the vSphere environment, and second, how to take backup and restore to the original location. So before we start, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notification, like the video to get every new update almost every day. So as you can see, this is my lab which installed ES6i01, ES6i2 and Veeam Backup and Replication. If you don't know how to install ES6i and Windows Server to install Veeam Backup and Replication, I highly recommend you to check out my playlist about VMware vSphere 7 Foundation course. There you can understand how you can install ES6i, install virtual machine, and you can start this lab like me. So we're gonna click on full screen here, and first off we need to connect to Veeam Backup and Replication, and this is my vSphere, as you can see, which included 2 ES6i and 3 virtual machine. One of them is VMware vCenter server, and with this vCenter server we can manage our ES6is, which you can understand it and you can easily get the foundation of how you can work on with vSphere environment in my vSphere 7 Foundation course. You can find it in my website, which is very complete course, and of course in my YouTube channel. So now here is our Veeam Backup, and we want to actually connect this Veeam Backup server to this area, which is vSphere, to take backup from our vSphere environment by Veeam Backup and Replication. So here we'll go to the inventory and we're going to click on virtual infrastructure, and here we're going to click on add a server. So as you can see, we have two options, VMware vSphere and Microsoft Hyper-V. For our demo, we're going to click on VMware vSphere, and here we'll click on vSphere. Of course, you have an option to connect your Veeam Backup to the cloud director to take backup from your cloud virtual machines. So here we'll type the IP address of our vCenter server or ES6i. So to practice, again, I should mention that you can connect your Veeam Backup server to vCenter or ES6i. If you haven't have a VMware vCenter server, and if you don't like to install it and actually deal with how you can install vCenter server, you can easily install an ES6i and just install a virtual machine inside it, and again connect your Veeam Backup to that ES6i, and you can easily practice like me. There is no need to install vCenter server, but as I want to make it real in production environment, I installed vCenter server. Again, in my YouTube channel you can see the installation of vCenter server, or I have a very great course which is Foundation and Configuring vSphere. You can find it in my website. So we'll type the hostname or the IP address of the vCenter server, and here we're gonna add the credential of our vCenter server or ES6i, and this is the password, and we're gonna click on apply. And here is said this is the certificate security alert. You should here you can see the certificate. You should click on continue. And here, as you can see, the process of adding our vCenter server to Veeam Backup and Replication is going to collecting disk and volumes from our vCenter server and the ES6is inside of that vCenter server. We're going to click on next, and this is the summary page, and we're going to click on finish. And now here we have vCenter server, and under vCenter server we have again data center. Let me show you here. We have data center cluster and these two ES6i and these 3 virtual machine. This is exactly, you will find it in your virtual infrastructure, VMware vSphere, vCenter server. your vCenter server, and here you can see the data center and the cluster, and of course your virtual machine. When you click on cluster or data center or vCenter, you can see all of your virtual machine that running on that ESXi hosts. So now that we saw how to connect our Veeam Backup server to the vSphere environment, now is the time to take backup from our virtual machine. I'm gonna take backup from a MikroTik device and Vwwam, which is a virtual machine. So let me power on these virtual machines. I mean just MikroTik, and I want to take backup, and then I want to show you how you can easily restore them to the original location, which is, as you can see, Veeam is let me show you, installed on this ESXi, which is 10.1, and MikroTik is installed in the second ESXi. This is actually the warning to install VM tools on MikroTik. As you can see, obviously because this is a Linux operating system, you cannot install. So, and MikroTik again installed to this ESXi. That's great, and we'll get back to our Veeam Backup and Replication. So here you can right click on the virtual machine and say add to the new job. Very simple, very easy. Or you can go to home and just click on Veeam Backup, and here just click on a backup job, and here you have an option virtual machines. That's great. So I prefer this option from home, and let's say for example VM's backup or things like that. So, and down here we have high priority, which is new option in Veeam Backup and Replication version 11. Here you can select this option for jobs sensitive to start time or job with the strict RPO or restore point objective. So we're gonna unselect this option, but in your production environment, if you have a massive virtual machines or very important virtual machines that you want to first take backup from them, you should click on this option. That means Veeam Backup and Replication first focus on the main or first job, and then for the low priority job. So we're going to click on next, and here we're going to click on add, and there we'll scroll the data center, and we're going to select these two virtual machines, and we'll click on add. And now here, as you can see, we have 160 megabyte and around 9 gigabyte for this virtual machine. Here you can exclude, for example, the disks. If your virtual machine have 2 disks, you can exclude here by choosing disks. For example, here you should add the IE or iSCSI or whatever disks that you have in your virtual machines. So that's great. You can work on exclusion. So another great example to use exclusion, let's say that you, for example, let me get back here, and you will add the entire virtual machines here from that vCenter server. Of course, here you can, for example, exclude this vCenter server from this job. This is a great example if you want to exclude some virtual machines to not take backup from your virtual machine that you want to select from entire vCenter server or ESXi. So let's remove it, and we're going to click on next, and here we have the recalculation. That's great. And here we have Veeam Backup Proxy, which is the default one. By the way, when you install Veeam Backup and Replication, Veeam Backup itself is going to become a proxy server or main proxy server. If you have a massive vSphere environment or several locations, several data centers, of course you need to install very strong Veeam proxy server, or I should say external Veeam proxy server, which in my course you can find it. So here is the default repository which is going to be installed in our here, let me show you in our repo partition. Here you can see the Veeam Backup and Replication Backup job when we start the job from here. So here the retention policy is going to be 7. You can select 14 or whatever, and here you can say restore point, and here you can say by 14 restore points. So that's great. The default one is okay. And here is the option you can select. For example, keep weekly full backup, only one, and the rest of them, which is very easy. But if you're running out of space for your Veeam backup, you should unselect this option and keep it as a default. And here you can select the second destination for taking backup. There is 2 destinations. The first one is going to be Veeam copy. That means when you take backup from your virtual machines by the here I mean backup job, you can transfer them by Veeam copy job to the another location. So here you can specify the second location if you have already configured Veeam copy job. The second one is going to be your tape drive. That means if you configured your backup job to transfer to the second location, which is going to be your tape drive, again, you can select this option and of course select this job when it's finished by Veeam Backup and Replication, transfer to your tape drive or transfer to another Veeam Backup server or another repository by Veeam copy job. That's great. And here we have the advanced option. Actually, in most cases you don't need to configure them, but here I do recommend you to use the incremental, which is recommended, and create synthetic full backup periodically for example, in your weekend by Saturday or Sunday. At least you will see 1 week you will have the full backup, and through the rest of the weeks you will have the incremental backup. So that means when you want to restore any point, first off you will restore the last full backup and the exact point that you choose from Veeam Backup, which is going to be your incremental. So let's say that you took full backup last Friday, but here, for example, here is Monday, and you want to restore the incremental backup, which is going to be the latest changes to your virtual machine by Monday. Veeam Backup is going to merge the Friday full backup with the Monday incremental backup together and restore it exactly first the full backup and then the incremental, which is going to be by Monday. The full one is going to be Friday and the second is going to be by Monday. That means if you remove the full version of your backup, you cannot restore the Monday because these two is going to be merged and restore to the original location for your virtual machines. So, and here you can say, for example, Saturday. In most cases we'll use the weekend. So, or here you can say, for example, I want to only full backup every month. When you select this option, when you don't have enough space for your repositories is going to be your DAS, which is going to be direct attached storage on your Veeam Backup server. You're going to be NAS, or it's going to be your SAN storage. So if you're running out of space, I highly recommend you again select at least 1 day and this option. But again, if you want more space, you can unselect this one and say every first month on Friday. So that means every first month of the Friday we will have the full backup, and through the rest of the month you will have the incremental. That means when you want to restore any point from that month, first you will restore the Friday full backup here and then the incremental backup. But as you can see, in most cases we don't change these options, which is great option for us. And here we have maintenance, storage, and these are the default option, and okay, and next. And here we can enable application aware processing and enable gas file system indexing. That means if you enable application aware processing, you can take backup and restore from the application like SQL Server or from your file server. You can restore the exact file that you deleted from you or your users in the network. Or here you can dig in on the file and do a search from your files. Again, is going to be file servers or SQL servers. These two options are great. Here you can select, and for example, you can say this virtual machine, you can add it, and you can here set the credential for that if you have, for example, SQL Server. So here you can add, for example, for your standard account or things like that. So this is going to be great for your SQL Server, Oracle server, or something like file server. Here by selecting enable guest file system, and you can index, for example, this virtual machine, and you will specify the credential for that file server, and you can easily use the restore option for restore file option. So we're gonna select these options and next, and here we have the job. You can say for this time or monthly at this time or periodically. If you have a very specific server and all your business rely on that servers, I highly recommend you use periodically, every hour, I don't know, continuously, or something like, let's say every 3 or 4 hours. You can take benefit of restoring to the exact location that you want. And if you have another job created, of course you can use the last option, which is going to be start this job after the previous job that you created. So let me say this option, and let's say apply, and we'll click on run the job when I click finish. And now as you can see, the jobs here and start, we're gonna right click and say statistics or report. We're gonna click on statistics, and we should wait for the details. So the Veeam Backup is going to gather the information for these two virtual machines, change the block tracking, and waiting for backup infrastructure, and start taking backup from your virtual machines. So we will wait for the process, and I will get back to you when our virtual machine took backup by Veeam Backup and Replication. So now, as you can see, we successfully took backup from our Veeam Backup and Replication. Here, as you can see, the job started at this point, building list of the machines to process, and the rest of them, as you can see. And these are success for this virtual machine. Here you can see the duration about 5 minutes, and the process rate and bottleneck and the rest of them, as you can see, and the speed is going to be 44 megabytes. So that's great. And here we'll go to our repository here, which we specified our E as a repository. Let me show you here. Sorry, here in backup infrastructure and backup repository, here you can see the default repository, which is our E disk drive here, as you can see. When we click on populate, here you can see we have the repository for our Veeam Backup and Replication. That's great. And here we have the backup folder in our repository, and here we have the specific folder named VM's Backup based on our backup job here. And here again you can click on statistics to see the reports, or of course you can click on reports here. For example, by Mozilla Firefox, you can see the entire report for that virtual machine. The job is going to be full, and of course next time is going to be incremental backup when we took backup from our Veeam Backup and Replication. So And let me show you here again. In my disk drive, we have VBK. Let me show you. The extension is going to be VBM. This is going to be the metadata file, or let's say configuration file for this job. And the second is going to be the exact data that you took when you take backup from that job. Here we have 5.2 gigabyte for actually backing up our VM1 and MikroTik. So that means these two virtual machines, I mean MikroTik and VM, already took backup to this file. So, and by the way, here is my course here in my website. You can go to courses, and here in Veeam availability, here you can click on Veeam Backup and Replication, which is a very great and complete course, I should say, in the world. I should say I am very super specialist in Veeam Backup and Replication. I am working in ISPs and big data centers. I love actually to be satisfied when I'm working in the data center. For example, I don't want to think of, oh, what happened if somebody attacked me, if ransomware attacks my data center, what should I do? Veeam Backup is answer all your questions in the entire, I should say, network. So here you can understand and see the exact course, which is very complete and step-by-step course. So, and here again, this is the files. Let me minimize this window, and here let me actually, for example, I want to restore MikroTik. First off, I want to delete it, and of course, if you want to delete it, you should power it off, and then I want to restore the exact virtual machine to the original location. Let's say power off, and here I'm gonna delete from disk. Oops, what happened? So we actually deleted MikroTik from our vCenter server. Now let's say that we want to restore it again. You delete it accidentally, or you upgrade your virtual machine, Windows or Linux, and you're not happy with that. You want to get back to previous point, or something like, for example, you upgrade the application server, something like SQL Server, and again you're not happy with the upgrade. You can again get back to the previous point with Veeam Backup and Replication. It's very great and wonderful application. I rolled back to the several virtual machine in my job. For example, when I do a upgrade for again virtual machine application or things like that, you can again use this option, not only delete the virtual machine. So when you entirely delete the virtual machine, you can restore it from the backup data, and don't worry, your MikroTik virtual machine is not in your vSphere but is here in this file. We want to use this file and restore MikroTik to the original location. So here I'm going to go to home again, and this time we're gonna select restore from a backup or from replica. A replica, of course, is going to use your application job, which later on we're going to talk about it, but here we're going to use restore from a backup. So here it said entire VM restore, disk restore, guest file restore, or application. If you have a SQL server or Oracle server or other application, you want to restore exact file or table from your SQL server, you should use this option. But of course, you should select application aware processing, which I'll show you in the process of taking backup from our virtual machines. If let's say that we have SQL server and we already took application aware processing, you can select this option and restore the exact table or whatever that you want. You can, again, if you have a file server and selected the file indexing, which I showed you again in the previous window, which was take backup from virtual machine, again, you can use this option. You can, again, let's say that you have a virtual machine with 2 disks. You can restore only one disk of that virtual machine. Let's say you have second partition, which is your file server, and all of your users connect to that partition which you created a folder and share it for the entire network. But the first disk is going to be your operating system, something like Windows. So in your C partition, you will install the virtual machine, and in the second partition, you will install, or I should say, create folders and share them for your users. You can only take backup from the second partition by this option, but for our demo, we're going to click on entire virtual machine. So instance recovery, it will, I should say, point your virtual machine from the backup to the vSphere, and the process of restoration is very fast than other option. But we want to actually use the entire VM restore. We don't want to use instance recovery. We have time. For example, let's say that you have a very massive virtual machine, more than 2 or 3 terabytes. So restoring them is very time consuming, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours based on your backup storage or repositories, or the media, which is going to be 10 gigabytes or not. Based on that media, you will see that it took time. But with instance recovery, you can restore, or I should say, point the virtual machine from your backup to the vSphere. That means you will see the virtual machine, but actually it's running from your backup. If you're happy with that, if you're satisfied with that, you can restore it in the background. This is the great option for a massive virtual machine. But in most cases, we'll use entire VM restore. And here, let's say we have search, let's say MikroTik. Here, that's great. Here we'll click on show, and of course here I'm going to select MikroTik. Here, how you can search the virtual machine in case that you have 100 virtual machines per job, but it's not a good case. You add 100 virtual machine per job, at least 10 or 20 virtual machines per job, that would be okay. And here we have two options: from infrastructure or from backup. From infrastructure, it means from here. Here you can select which virtual machine, but obviously you delete it. That means if you select from infrastructure, it says there is no MikroTik. What should you do? You should select this option from infrastructure. I mean, when you have the virtual machine in your vSphere, or for example, you upgrade your virtual machine and you want to restore it. But here, you should select from backup. It automatically point that file here, as you can see. And we're gonna say MikroTik. It says less than a day we took backup from exact date. So we'll click on MikroTik, and here we'll click on next. Here it says restore to the original location or another location. So that's great option in case, let's say that your ESXi and the virtual machine is no longer available in the network. For example, you have a, I don't know, hardware failure, or you use the local disk server and you don't have SAM, or whatever reason that you no longer actually see your ESXi. That means if you select the original location, Veeam Backup is going to take a look at your, this IP address. Of course, this virtual machine is no longer available. You can select this option and say, for example, here, not this one, again this one. Or if it's here, you can select this host. This is great example that you can transfer your virtual machine from backup to the another ESXi and power on them immediately. So let's click on this one, and here you can see quick rollback, restore chain block. If you have a software problem, in most cases we don't use this option, and we're gonna click on next is going to actually take a look at the Veeam Backup data. And here is a great example. You can select scan the restore machine malware in case that you have a ransomware attack or malware attack. You can actually select this option while you're under the attacking from, hackers or virus or ransom or things like that. So we're gonna select this one because it's going to overload your Veeam server and it needs much time to restore. So we'll click on next. And here the reason to restore, we don't want to write something. And here is verify the virtual machine. Here is the summary. If you're happy with that, you should click on this box to power on that virtual machine and let's say finish. So here you can see the restoring VM window here. Start the job, restore from the default repository, and here is the process, and here is the parameters that we select during the restoration, and here is the rescan and statistics. Here is set time, the object remaining 6 of 9, and the capacity is going to be around 600 megabyte, and the restoration rate now is 50 kilobytes, but it's going to increase when you start taking backup from your virtual machine disks. And here again in the log we can see the process, and here is starting to restore these two virtual machines, restoring hard disk 2 with this amount, and here again restoring the disk 1. And here we're gonna click on statistics. Now as you can see, object remaining 4 of 9 and the restore rate is 17 megabytes. So that's great. Now we successfully restored our virtual machine. Here as you can see, the states is success, start time and end time, and the virtual machine, and the restore type is going to be full VM restore. And we're gonna click on this one and we'll go back to our vSphere. Now you can see our virtual machine is restored successfully, and here as you can see there is 2 disks, as you can see, disk 1 and disk 2, and it's already powered on and ready for you actually to work on your production environment. So this is how we can take backup from your virtual machines and restore them immediately if you need. So here of course if I again start this job, it's going to take the backup which is going to be incremental. So that means here we will have another file with another extension and another arrow here. As you can see, this is the green arrow. So that's great. This is the file. This is going to be, as you can see, when I hold the cursor, it tells you that this is the incremental backup file. Let me show you the extension. It's going to be VIB, which I think is going to be Veeam incremental backup, and the first one is going to be Veeam backup or things like that. So, and here as you can see we have the error. Why? Because first off we created that virtual machines which is going to be MikroTik and VM, but when we delete the MikroTik, the backup is cannot recognize it because it's going to add the virtual machine by the ID. That's the main point. So if you want to again take backup from that MikroTik, you should again add it to your Veeam job here. So here, as you can see, Veeam backup is incremental, and these are the process, as you can see. So again, here I want to add, let's say, MikroTik. Let's remove it, and again I'm going to add it here. So that means again we're gonna take backup from this MikroTik device. So let me show you. So don't forget, when you already remove the virtual machine from your entire vSphere or Hyper-V, you should again add it to the job. As you can see, again, is added as an incremental backup, and this is the previous virtual machine that again we took backup, and this is the file. This is the third one. The first one is only incremental for VM1 as you saw before, and this is going to be for these two virtual machines. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have a question, please comment below in this video, and you can comment, ask question, or recommend me something, or suggest me something for this course. For example, if you're happy with, I don't know, creating physical backup, which is taking backup from your physical server or things like that, just comment below and I will make that video for you, and of course I will answer to your questions.